Disney's Pinocchio, released in 1940, is an adaptation of Carlo Collodi's classic children's book, The Adventures of Pinocchio. However, the movie strays significantly from the original book in terms of its messaging and values. It's essential to recognize how Pinocchio was transformed into a tool of conformity and obedience, rather than an adventure in self-discovery and liberation. One of the significant differences between the book and the movie is the portrayal of the blue fairy. In the book, the fairy is an ambiguous figure that appears and disappears, sometimes helping Pinocchio and sometimes hindering him. But in the Disney version, the blue fairy is an authoritative figure who promises Pinocchio that if he follows the rules, he can become a real boy, and never actually offers any help until after he is already in trouble. This portrayal of the fairy as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who demands Jiminy kneel in front of her reinforces the propaganda of obedience and conformity to the system. The idea that being a real boy is only a reward for following the rules is a problematic message to send to children. Jiminy Cricket is another character who represents authority in the movie. Besides giving off a weird, sex-crazed, interspecies sexual predator kind of vibe, he is the personification of a cop. He is given power and authority over Pinocchio with no training and absolutely no history of knowing right from wrong. If anything, he broke into Geppetto's house and was illegally squatting, yelling at things, anger issues, and a very short temper. However, unlike the Blue Fairy, Jiminy's role in the story is minimal. He shows up after the fact and never really helps Pinocchio. In fact, Jiminy walks away from Pinocchio twice, leaving him to fend for himself. Despite his lack of contribution to Pinocchio's journey, Jiminy is still rewarded in the end, receiving a fancy badge. This portrayal of Jiminy as a symbol of authority reinforces the idea that the police and authority figures are there to help you, even though in reality, they often perpetuate violence and oppression and don't actually prevent crime, but are there just for show. Geppetto, on the other hand, is portrayed as a good worker who gets rewarded with Pinocchio. This portrayal reinforces the idea that hard work and diligence are the only ways to achieve success in life. However, this message is problematic because it ignores the systemic factors that contribute to economic inequality and the exploitation of the working class. He has no qualifications to become a father, yet the Blue Fairy rewards him with that for no reason. Then, while Pinocchio has only existed for minutes, he decides to pawn him off to school to be institutionalized because he has no time to deal with it. Father of the Year Award. The next day starts off with Pinocchio getting ready for school. On his way to school, he meets Honest John and Gideon. Honest John and Gideon represent the working class in the movie. They have to scam and lie to survive and sell out to capitalists like Stromboli, who gets rich off of the work and misery of others. This portrayal of the working class as deceitful and willing to sell out to capitalists reinforces the capitalist propaganda that the only way to succeed is by exploiting others, and approves of the fact that it's a dog-eat-dog world. Once again, Jiminy is nowhere to be found, just like cops.
Fine conscience. I turned out to be.
How did the Blue Fairy even pick this guy? Honest John and Gideon end up selling Pinocchio to Stromboli. Stromboli is the evil immigrant portrayed as a Roma who wants to profit from the misery of others. He is portrayed as a wanderer and therefore deemed evil because wanderers do not conform to the system. This portrayal of immigrants as evil reinforces harmful stereotypes and perpetuates the idea that people who do not conform to society's norms are inherently dangerous. Pinocchio, for looking for the easy way out, is punished by being sold into child slavery, or puppet slavery in this case. Jiminy shows up and, instead of saving Pinocchio from the evil Stromboli, he does googly eyes to the marionettes and walks away, leaving a less than a day old to fend for himself. A child against an evil man. Just like an Uvalde cop would. Poor Pinocchio is sold to the evil immigrant and locked in a cage, threatened by death if he doesn't conform. The fairy shows up, who already knows what has happened to Pinocchio and who Stromboli is, pretends not to know, and asks Pinocchio to explain why he is in a cage. Pinocchio, a scared little child, lies, and his nose grows bigger, which can be interpreted as a way to perpetuate the negative stereotypes of people with big noses. They are not to be trusted, and we all know Disney was an anti-Semite, so I don't really think I need to get into that. In the next scene, we see the evil, lazy working-class duo of Honest John and Gideon celebrating their success from selling Pinocchio to Stromboli, talking to the coachman. As always, trying to get rich quick, which is the bad way to get rich. Only hard work will make you rich, because we all know of all the billionaires who worked a billion times harder than you to get rich, and none of them were born into money. So we know they are trying to perpetuate the myth of laziness is not the answer, and work will set you free. I think I heard that before. Pinocchio, on his way home, gets stopped again by Honest John and Gideon, who scam him into going into Pleasure Island. Once again, Jiminy is nowhere to be found. The coachman portrays the evil capitalist in the movie. He collects disobedient boys and takes them to Pleasure Island, a place where there are no cops. All the food and drink you can consume, and all for free. Sounds like paradise. This portrayal of pleasure, hedonism, and vices as being bad reinforces the idea that fun is wrong and that we should avoid it, because only work matters. However, later on we found out that Pleasure Island is a trap, and those who indulge in pleasure and hedonism become slaves. This messaging perpetuates the idea that those who don't conform to society's norms deserve to be punished and controlled, and that pleasure is bad, school and institutions are good. Once again, Jiminy comes too late and walks out on Pinocchio again because he called Lampwick, a child he just met, and let's not forget, Pinocchio is still a kid, so doesn't really know the meaning of friendship, his best friend. Even though Jiminy is supposed to be his conscience and not his friend, Jiminy gets jealous and leaves. Pinocchio figures out what happens to lazy boys and decides to escape on his own. Pinocchio finally makes it home, only to find that his father isn't there. A magical letter appears, we assume it's from the Blue Fairy because it was blue, and tells him his father has been eaten by a whale named Monstro. We never find out what in the world Geppetto was doing in the middle of the sea looking for a wooden boy, but there's a talking wooden boy, so that's not the only plot hole here. Monstro, the whale, represents the forces of nature in the movie. In a capitalist society, nature is seen as bad because it cannot be tamed and is unpredictable. There is no order. However, it's important to note that a whale, just like a tornado, cannot be evil because good and evil are human constructs. Nature operates according to its own laws, and it doesn't care about our values and beliefs. Pinocchio saves the day by using all the things he learned while being a bad boy. Like when he was smoking on Pleasure Island, he learned too much smoke makes you sick and nauseous, makes you maybe cough and sneeze. He learned how to break stuff. So by breaking chairs for firewood, and by not listening to Geppetto, whose only idea was to get enough fish so they won't starve, and looks like he had given up, getting cozy in the belly of a whale. But when Geppetto finally starts helping, once again, without the help of Jiminy, who was outside trying to get in for some reason, that conscience was useless. We see that the only thing you can rely on is the people around you, solidarity, and not Jiminy or the Blue Fairy. After they escape, Geppetto takes Pinocchio home. Final scene, the Blue Fairy shows up to congratulate Pinocchio for his bravery and to turn him into a real boy. What they've told him he always wanted. This reinforces the idea that obedience and conformity once again are rewarded, even though it was through disobedience and breaking rules and all the things he learned being a bad boy and being himself, or trying to find himself, that Pinocchio was able to save himself and his family. The Blue Fairy, with her authoritarian presence and promise of rewards, represents the state of ruling class, using the promise of rewards to control and manipulate the working class. And of course, we see Jiminy Cricket being rewarded with a gold badge for his service to Pinocchio. This is despite the fact that Jiminy was largely useless throughout the entire story, only showing up after the fact to provide advice that Pinocchio could have easily figured out on his own. We saw how petty he was, how jealous he got, and his short temper. The badge is a symbol of authority and power, and Jiminy's undeserved reward showed how those in power often reward those who do not challenge them or oppose a threat to their authority. Overall, the final scene in Pinocchio reinforces the idea that they've been trying to promote throughout the whole movie, the idea of authority, obedience, and conformity, all while ignoring the bravery and resourcefulness of the characters who were able to save themselves. As a society, we must work towards dismantling systems of oppression and promoting diversity and individuality, rather than reinforcing harmful societal norms and messages of obedience and conformity. In conclusion, Disney's Pinocchio is a movie that promotes conformity and obedience to authority figures while demonizing those who do not conform to societal norms. Through its portrayal of characters such as the Blue Fairy as an authoritarian figure, Jiminy Cricket as a passive authority figure, Honest John and Gideon as working-class individuals who must resort to scamming and lying to survive, the film reinforces the message that following rules and conforming to societal norms is the only way to achieve success. Furthermore, the film's portrayal of Pleasure Island, as a place where hedonism and vices lead to enslavement, promotes the idea that fun and pleasure are inherently bad, and that those who indulge in them deserve to be punished. This message is particularly troubling as it reinforces the idea that individuals who do not conform to societal norms or engage in immoral behavior should be punished and excluded from society. Overall, while Pinocchio is an enjoyable and iconic film, it is important to recognize the harmful messages it promotes. As a society, we must work towards dismantling systems of oppression and promoting diversity and individuality, rather than reinforcing harmful societal norms and messages of obedience and conformity. And even though there's a lot of plot holes and a lot of things went unanswered, did anything ever happen with the coachman's weird child trafficking ring? No one ever said anything about that. They just let it go. I mean, come on, you're a blue fairy. Are you just going to let that happen? Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.